What's up, guys? I'm back here again at Lee Cycle, and today I have another very special motorcycle for you. It's one you guys have been asking for since they upped the power on this year's model, and they changed it. Some people would say the change is not for the best, but I'll let you guys decide. We have the 2026 M1000RR here on the dyno, ready to go. So for 2026, I ripped this thing apart last night. I noticed a couple changes. Definitely the air filter. We're getting about 20% more surface area into the air box. The air filter is completely new for the 2026 M1000RR, unseen on any of the other BMW models so far. And not only is the inlet bigger, allowing about 20% more air in, but we also have the air box itself changes with a bigger throttle bodies now and a short stack. These stacks are extremely short in this air box now. That also should allow for more air. Now on the bottom end, we got no revision. So we still have that 2-piston ring design, the forged moly pistons with a titanium rotating assembly, all exclusive to the M1000RR. A lot of people confuse the M1000XR or the M1000 single R to have the same engine as the M1000 double R, but it does not. Those both have engines from the S1000RR, which is a great motor, don't get me wrong, but the M1000RR is in a league of its own. BMW is claiming a couple more ponies for this bike, so let's see how it does against our 23 on the same dyno, and I'll do some other comparisons to other models like the 25 S1000RR, the 25 V4, and the 26 RSV4 that we've had in here so far. Let's see who the king of the hill is for stock, and we're going to modify this bike as well, so we're tuning it today. So let's roll this thing up on the dyno and get going. Stock runs first, and let's see what she does. The first thing you see when you look at this M1000RR isn't the carbon fiber that we saw from the 23 and 24. We have plastic instead. Plastic. Even the fairing stay here is now back to a metal alloy instead of carbon fiber. We had a carbon fiber fairing stay for 23 and 24. No carbon here. But the carbon we do have now went from that gloss carbon to a dry or matte carbon, I guess you'd call it. And it's matte everywhere. So it's matte down there, matte here. Even the rear set guards are matte. The flapper and the chain guard is also matte. And you can see right here, we got the nice back seat here. It's all carbon fiber, which actually was not carbon fiber on the 23 and 24, but we have this exposed carbon fiber here with the RR, but also an RR here in the other direction. I don't know if I like that. Maybe they should just left that blank and put the RR here. That's a little bit of lazy in my opinion because I'm OCD. And of course, the M, basically everywhere they can fit it on this bike. I mean, even on the frame, it's etched in. M. Everything says M on this thing. Even the back wheel here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, you can see right there. It says M. Look at that. Okay guys, stock runs are done here. What are we making for the M1000RR for 2026? I guess they're calling this a 2026 model because they're not calling it a 2025. Kind of like the RSV4. If it comes out in mid or late 2025, they consider it a 26 at that point. I don't know why. It's something to do in the US. They're not doing that in Europe. It's just a US thing. So if you want to call it 25, cool. But they're calling it 26. Now on to the numbers here. We are making a modest 192 with restrictions. Now everyone knows BMW is a heavily restricted bike. So to see this kind of curve just kind of waving everywhere, not really straight and flat, is just perfectly normal for BMW. In fact, take a look at second gear here. It's an absolute joke. Yeah, this is second gear, guys. Forget the peak power here because we're only in second gear. It kind of messes with the numbers, so don't worry about that. But look at this, man. We're making at 7,000 RPM, we're making 57 horsepower. I mean, I know some 600s that do better than that. That is wild work right there. Now, I guess we can go ahead and compare stock for stock to the other models to see how a stock 26 M1000RR does if you were to never tune it. Now, how about we start with the 23 M1000RR, our old shop bike that we had. And you can see the restrictions here in fifth gear actually are more significant for 23 than 25. Looks like they've kind of unleashed a little bit, but in typical BMW fashion, they're also neutering more of the mid-range. So people always want to talk about this torque tune, and we've made videos on this before, but the torque tune, for example, will give you a more robust mid-range in that second gear that we were talking about before, but it really neuters the top end of the bike. And it looks like kind of like that's what they did in 23 and 25. They're kind of giving you more up top where this bike is supposed to be at a track and above 10,000 RPM and giving you less below that. You can see the 23 in blue and the 26 in red. Now how about we compare it to our 25 S1000RR? Now here's our 25 S1000RR versus our 26 M1000RR, and you can see the S1000RR is actually making more power. Now, also keep in mind the dyno room here was a little bit warm today. I think the combi's reading 90+ degrees, which does affect the total output of power on the bike. But still, the 25 S1000RR is coming up on top, and we've got a little more RPM here on the M1000RR, which will take it at its track. But you can see that blue line just is carrying a little bit better than that red line almost everywhere, which tells us what? This bike worth $10,000 more than an S1000RR, or even more, $15,000 more. It's a $40,000 bike. You can pick up an S1000 for what, 20 for a base model, 27 fully loaded. Now let's go ahead and check the other models like the V4. Okay, so here's our V4, our 25 V4 in blue, and in red we've got the 26 M1000RR, and you can see they're kind of hand in hand here, but both models are both extremely restricted. But the M1000RR at the track is going to come out on top. It stretches out the RPM much better than the V4 does. It's kind of a trade-off right here, stock for stock on the V4. I mean, these are all stock tuning runs, so we're all dealing with restrictions here. Now let's go ahead and check out the RSV4. And I just picked a random run here for the RSV4, but look, it's destroying it right here in this RPM range, though the M1000RR is making more RPM. Again, we're talking stock to stock here. I know that Aprilia is begging for more RPM, so we'll see how much further we can get out when we get that thing finally back on the dyno. And you can see down here that shift cam on this M1000 and the S1000, really good stuff because it's making all this torque for bikes that are 1100 cc's, making more torque, making more power, even stock tuning, it's making more, which is impressive. Now let's go ahead and check out that CBR. Now here's the CBR in blue and the M1000 here in red again, and you can see that M1000 is just destroying things down here. It's almost 20 wheel horsepower right here. I mean, that's pretty unreal. And then up top here, it's destroying more. And keep in mind, the CBR at this point already had velocity stacks and an intake in it, or an air filter, but it does have stock tuning on these runs. The M1000 is going to run circles around the CBR at the track here. It's just, that's a lot of bike for the M1000. Now we've checked all that out, let's go ahead and see what this bike does tuned finally and see if this is an impressive bike, because so far it's run of the mill for $40,000. All right, guys, I fully take back what I said about the bike not being impressive. Check this out. This bike is making 208 rear wheel horsepower with tuning. That is insanity. I've never seen an M1000RR even come close to that number, especially in 90-degree IET temps. Now, before you guys make up a bunch of excuses for that number, again, the bike is hot. It's 90+ degrees in the IET, which means this bike is pulling timing. Number two, we have a completely stock exhaust system. I don't want to hear anyone say anything different. Here it is, completely stock can. It is made by a Krapovich, but it is completely stock. It also has a stock air filter. It has stock everything. The only thing we've done to this bike is put California 91 pump gas in it that we've put in every single bike, and our tuning. That's an impressive number. Now, if we're going to compare that to our stock runs here, you can see we are making heaps of power everywhere over that stock baseline. We're making almost 20 wheel horsepower more in some areas up top. This is how the bike is supposed to be when it's sold. All right, guys, one thing I forgot to talk about in the dyno here was second gear. Check this out. Big difference between second gear stock and then second gear modified. There's almost 60 wheel horsepower missing out of the mid-range there at about 7,000 RPM. You can see that's added back in when we de-restricted the motorcycle and did our stage one, and you can see up top we're also gaining a whole bunch of power. Now these restrictions are huge in second gear, and they taper down to third gear and taper even less in fourth and taper even less in fifth gear, but you will see that restriction when it's stock in every single gear except first and sixth gear. Now let's move on to more comparisons. So this is our 23 M1000RR that was stock, and you can see here the bike is actually making less power till we get up top, and then it just starts running away from it up top. Look up here at the very top here. We've got a discrepancy of 16 wheel horsepower and even a little bit of torque. We got 6-wheel torque right there. And it's right here at that track RPM. Now, you can see right here where the stacks drop. This is a normal dip right here. We see it right here on both bikes. That's the 23 and this is the 26. Now the 26 airbox, like I said, is completely changed, so this dip is going to change based on that. But you can see based on those new stacks that are a little bit lower, we're getting more power up top, but we're sacrificing here. But it's not much of a sacrifice. I mean, we are talking about 10-wheel horsepower right here and 6-wheel torque. Now, the bike is such a monster, in my opinion, in the low and mid-range that it can handle this kind of hit. Now, this is a very important comparison here because we have the 26 M1000RR in red and we have the 25 S1000RR in blue. Again, same exact mods that we're talking about here, meaning no mods at all, just tuning and pump gas. Just like I said before, we're taking a hit in the low and mid range based on those velocity stacks and new airbox, but they're now really benefiting up here up top. And we're talking that starting about 12.4 when it really kind of separates out. And of course, with the M1000, we have more RPM as well. We keep that RPM stock for warranty woes, although the M1000 seems like it wants to breathe a little bit more. It seems like we can add a little more RPM to the 26, but we're not going to. So I guess the question with this then is that 6-wheel horsepower right there and the way this thing makes power really matter to someone who's looking at something that is possibly $15,000 to $20,000 more off the showroom floor? If you're racing, I'd say this does matter quite a bit. If you're just showboating, hey, just spend the money, right? But the S1000RR is an extremely effective track weapon as well. Forget these numbers up here and forget what you're seeing here. Both these bikes are a blast the track, but that M1000, the data is just shown right here, is just a little better up top. Now it's time to go ahead and get some MR12 in this thing. We're gonna drain out the 91 completely. We're gonna make sure this bike has absolutely no pump gas in it whatsoever to corrupt our results. Fill it with MR12, and then we're ready for our next dyno session here. Okay guys, I gotta take back everything I ever said about this bike being mid. I mean, look at that. That is 216 rear wheel horsepower with VP race fuel. That is unheard of for a stock BMW, completely unheard of. This is a first for a BMW. This is officially the most powerful BMW ever released for the public. I mean, this is a very, very, very impressive bike stock. All right, I was gonna compare this to the 23 M1000RR, but we never did run results with MR12 on that specific M1000RR for 23, so we don't get to embarrass the 23 M1000RR because I'm sure it would be embarrassing for it. Now let's go ahead and look at the 25 S1000RR right here. These are both race gas runs, but you can see the 25 S1000RR making 211 rear wheel horsepower while it's making 216 on the 26 M1000RR. And the M1000RR also has a little more RPM, plus it's really separating here. They're coming together and then separating right there at about 12,800. Now that 211 marker is where the S1000 peaks, while the M1000 just wants to keep going. That new inlet and velocity stacks, 20% more airflow really matters. So you can see it just wants to keep on going and going and going. And a lot of times we see parts trickle from the M1000RR to the S1000RR, so I wouldn't be surprised if soon we see the airbox, maybe in 26 or 27, make its way to the S1000, so we can see some good power from that bike as well. They are sacrificing in the mid-range and the low range versus that S1000RR, so light to light, just the mid-range stuff, the S1000 comes up on top of the track there, it's gonna separate, and it's gonna come around it up top of the track, or any kind of roll racing or any kind of racing. Now let's go ahead and compare it to the V4. I mean, this is pretty irrefutable data here. I don't even know how you come back from this one. Again, we are talking about stock exhaust systems. We saw how much we benefited on the V4 from the exhaust system, which I'm not gonna compare today because that's not gonna be fair until we get exhaust on the M1000RR and then come back here. So that M1000RR is just, it's annihilating it everywhere. I mean, it's not even, this isn't even a competition at this point. How much more power it's making in the mid-range, how much more power it's making up top. I mean, it is a brief breath right here. It is making a dab more power than the M1000RR where you see the stacks start coming into play. Let's go ahead and move on to that CBR 1000RR. And here we have the CBR in blue and we have the M1000RR in red. And the CBR, it doesn't stand a chance against the M1000R. This is a complete beatdown. The BMW is just responding so much better. It's not even a fair comparison. I mean, even down low here, we're talking over 20 wheel horsepower right here. That's absurd. Up top here, by the red line, almost 15 wheel horsepower. It's just making an insane amount of power. Thanks to BMW's shift cam technology they have on their bikes, that low and mid range, like I said, could be sacrificed, and we see it sacrificed for the top end. And like I said before, it is not going to matter that much when they sacrifice it because it's still making so much power in the low and mid range. So you guys saw it here. The M1000RR is finally worth the price. Now, before in 23, the carbon, the way it looked, the bike was impressive. We got ourselves one of those bikes, and on the dyno, it wasn't really putting the numbers we were expecting to put out. It wasn't impressive in that capacity, but it still was an impressive bike. But over the S1000RR, there wasn't much there. This bike, however, the 26, this bike is making gobs of power everywhere, and it's really flexing its muscles and showing people that it's worth the extra premium for a track guy. The only thing we did was tuning and pump gas, and then we did race gas, and I showed you all the comparable files to that. When we put exhaust on this, which I will be putting exhaust on this exact 26 M1000R and coming back to the dyno, then we'll do another comparison. We'll see how that V4 does, and we'll see how the RSV4 does when we get that together. So we're going to be comparing all these models, stock and tuned and modded. We're going to do a whole video comparison just comparing the bikes of 2025. Now, some of the other things we did on this bike is going to be the lower fan temperatures. Of course, what we're known for here, and the only ones that can really do it, is a full-time closed loop system. BT Moto's exclusive full-time closed loop system targets a lambda value and keeps on hitting it based on the feedback from the exhaust sensors. That also means if you do put exhaust on this bike, for example, you want to change it into a track bike or whatever, and you throw the Akrapovic on there, all you have to do is take those exhaust sensors and port them over to the new exhaust system, and the bike will self-tune for the new exhaust system, so there's no revisions needed. We also did partial throttle tuning to make sure our 25, 50, and 75% partial throttle loads are perfect, and obviously the bike has a full de-restriction as well. Now, another thing about the new 26 M1000RR, not only do we have a new airbox, new velocity stacks, but we also have a new head that has oval ports. So anyone that's trying to put exhaust on their 26 M1000RR needs to buy a brand new exhaust system that Akrapovic offers that has an oval port. The throttle bodies are also a little bit larger to accommodate more air as well. So the whole head's been changed a little bit to accommodate more air, and we're seeing that on the dyno graph. Now I gotta take this thing home. We're gonna slap some exhaust on it, put some parts on it, bring it back here. We're gonna do these same runs again and see what it makes with the new exhaust system. But we know from BMW, from the past at least, BMW isn't really known to make any power with an exhaust because the stock exhaust runs so well from the factory. Now also with our stage 1 tuning, we keep the intake flappers wide open at all times once you turn the bike on. And also the exhaust flapper stays open as well. So it gives you a deeper sound from the intake and the exhaust, as well as less of a restriction. And I'll be doing a full ride review on this motorcycle as well, so stay tuned. I think it's gonna do it for this video, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.